Yeah, and like I said, I'll go through your profile here, Paddy, because this is like, I read this. This made my life feel quite boring. that's all I'll say. So it was like, lived in Russia, you've lived in Pakistan, you lived in Oman, you studied in Australia in Brisbane, you studied Ecology and Conservation Biology, you then moved to South Africa, a research coordinator at the Kruger National Park, which sounds absolutely awesome.
Pretty
dude,
cool.
You can say whatever you say whatever the hell you want on here, and then you set up your own kombucha company in Birmingham.
Yes, random life twist.
Yeah, but like say
Massive
instantly
pivot.
interested. I'm like, firstly, like how was this as a young man that you lived in all these different countries? Was this parents taking you to different countries? And
yeah, we were lucky. So my dad
just come to
sorry,
that.
yeah,
That's all right.
My dad works in well, at the time he worked in duty frees in the airport. So he worked for an Irish company called Arinta. And we were lucky enough that he got a posting. Well, yeah, basically they just asked him if he was interested to sort of do any travel with his job. And so he got his first posting in Russia, which essentially was, and after Russia, it was essentially you know, travel to these countries that either don't have a duty free or the duty free is not doing well, and just make it better, essentially. So Russia was our first overseas. Myself and my sister and my mom, we were in Russia roughly about 6 months out of the year, so we didn't live there full time, whereas my dad did. But it didn't do very well for their relationship. They didn't really like being apart. So when he got another posting in Karachi in Pakistan, my mom went out there for a couple of weeks with him first to sort of scope it out and see if they think it would be a good idea or not. And they just decided, feck it, let's just bring the whole family over.
Where in Russia?
Moscow. Wow. Yeah, so I want to say I was 5. I think I was 5 when we first went over, and it was 2 years. So for us, it was sort of what we would do is sort of go over for 3 months. So they'd take us out early, either side of like the holidays, really. So we would be out there for about 6 months of the year, which was crazy. I mean, it's such a, I was so young. I don't remember an awful lot of it. I remember all of the good stuff, the winters, building giant snowmen on frozen lakes, they used to build ice like play parks. So they'd have like ice slides and ice swings and stuff. So that's the kind of stuff I remember. It was cool. It was interesting. Yeah.
How old are you now?
Turning 35 in November. Which
so this was
insane.
things were a little bit different back in Russia back then.
Yeah.
But still,
Jesus, when I think about it like that, I never thought about it.
Well, I know. Well,
30 years ago.
I guess you don't think like this is a 5-year-old either. But you must have been a bit of an outsider. An Irish family living in Russia. Was that an uncommon thing over there? I can't imagine it being the common.
Well, the good thing when you travel is there's always a strong community. Well, there was back then anyway. I found it seems to have changed now according to my dad, but back then when you went to foreign countries, you ended up either through my dad's work, they'd always have we'd have a strong Irish community or a community of people who worked for the same company, or it was usually the Irish one, to be honest, where you'd always come together, help each other out, and you'd go dinners and New Year's and stuff like that. So you didn't necessarily feel like that, but 100% when you're just living there and walking around in the markets and stuff, you're kind of like, of course, no one speaks English, so you have to try and communicate with your dictionary. Yeah.
And then you experienced Pakistan and Oman.
Yeah. So Pakistan was I was definitely older, definitely had more of an impact on me. That one was, I always tried to describe it as like the best worst experience of my life, if that makes sense.
Well, tell me more about that.
It's kind of like Karachi, which is where we were living. It's just an absolute assault on the senses in every word. Like for a 7-year-old going from Russia was a step, but Karachi was just another level. It was almost like a different world. I literally had a panic attack in the airport when we got off the plane because there was a bunch of women coming at me in the abaya, and I thought it was the Grim Reaper. Like, I panicked and I started crying. I was like, Jesus, and it's hot, and the smells and the sights and the poverty, it was intense, massively intense. And I think, as I mentioned to you as well, I had, anxiety and stuff, always dealing with that. And I think that's definitely where it started. It was like I've been able to kind of like pinpoint it back to that moment where it's just the sheer shock, I think, was difficult for a 7-year-old to sort of process. But then at the same time, in saying all of this, although yes, I was anxious, and that sort of stayed with me to a degree. Kids are very resilient, and you get over it relatively quickly, and you're able to sort of over time process all of these assaults in different respects, and sort of categorize them and put them into boxes and deal with them in your own sort of way. It's very interesting.
Yeah, what's interesting about childhood is it always feels normal to the child, whatever, even if it's, when I hear this, like you traveling to those countries at that age, I'm like, wow, that's really not normal. But as a child, I think you just take your experience as normal. And they say, look, travel is a great education. I believe that. I just wonder 100%. As a child, how much of a balance point between like stability and routine do we need versus, well, actually seeing the world and not allowing myself to settle into any patterns. Yeah, resilience, and it's tough, but it's actually a really good education for me. I'm sure it shapes who you are today as well.
100%.
Just come to that mic for it.
Sorry,
yeah, I don't want to miss any good things you're saying.
No, 100%. Like, I mean, I thought about this a lot over the years as well, and me and my sister would talk about it, and I would think, would we want to change anything but the reality is definitely not. I mean, although there was, the negatives where, it caused my, source of anxieties, etc. It opened your mind up to what a large chunk of the world actually is like, as a child. And although you're not able to process it in the same way at that time, it humbles you and sort of like you deal with it in different ways. But as you grow, for sure, it's 100%. Like, I think travel is the biggest educator. I think if people can do it, and because I know it's obviously a massive privilege given costs and stuff, but if you can do it, I 100% say to people to do it. And even as kids, because I've had people who have kids and they've said it to me before, and even my sister now, she's got 3 kids and they've just gone overseas for the first time to Bali, and she was very careful with where she went and how much she was pushing them and stuff. But for me, I think, like I said, kids are a bit more resilient than we give them credit for, and they can, especially if you have the support, they can definitely process things a lot quicker, I think, than we give them credit for. At least that's what I remember. Anyway. Yeah,
and you have to go with the flow when you're a child. I think when you're a 35-year-old adult, then there's more responsibilities. There'll be more reasons for you not to go and do those things like travel and see the world. Yeah. You say it being a great educator. Like, what would you say the main things that you learn as a youngster, mainly about traveling to these different countries and seeing different cultures?
I've always said, for me, it's always traveling. The best thing about traveling is seeing the environments and culture. I think that those are the best things. I think it's massively helped with my ability to communicate with people, for sure. Because for example, in Oman, my high school, we had 51 students. 49 of them were different nationalities, and it was me and another Irish girl who were the only 2, oddly enough, but everyone else were different nationalities. Okay. So you have people from literally every corner of the globe, from different backgrounds and different opinions and thoughts and experiences, and you're able to understand and speak and converse and discuss without in a good way, I think.
Yeah. Was your dad's approach to this, I'll work anywhere and it'll be great for the kids, or was his main motivator, to succeed in career, therefore I will just go wherever I need to go? Like, was there a part, because there's another guy I know who he's like, well, actually I want my kids to see parts of the world, and I'll pick the parts that I think they're going to benefit from. And I've spoken to other guys that are just so career driven that they go, wherever I need to go, I'm going to go.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question, actually. I would imagine it might maybe a bit of both. Dad is he loves what he does. He's very good at what he does. And I know that he always wanted to travel. More, he did it a lot when he was younger as well. I think he said something to my mom like, I'll help you see the world or something. I don't know, like when they got together, feck knows, but I'm sure that came up at some point. And I think when he did take the posting in Russia, it was something that they didn't want to do again. And I think my mom is very supportive as well. So that was obviously helpful. And then they just decided, no, let's bring them, because for both, I think, one, for his career, but two, knowing that it probably will be a good experience overall, which I agree, I think it was. Yeah. Although I describe it as the best worst experience, because it's, there's literally, people on the street begging, tapping your windows. The amount of poverty that you see is unbelievable. You can have a mansion and beside it you have shanty towns. It's very eye-opening as a child. We had bomb threats all the time at school and stuff like this. These things, the amount of stuff that we dealt with over there was mental. But at the same time, I think it opens you up to a whole realm of different experiences and ideas and stuff that you wouldn't normally in a nice calm country like the UK.
What's it like as a 7-year-old seeing all that poverty? Did it bring any guilt with it? Because there's sometimes, when I see some of the horrific things that are happening in the world, there's an element, I don't know what, like guilt that hangs over me that I'm not experiencing any of that. In fact, sometimes the opposite is like, it might be chauffeur driven, like taxis, it might be the best. Like, did you experience any of that divide?
So as a kid, when I mentioned a minute ago about how as a child you're able to deal with certain situations, and although it might not be the best, it might not sound the best, part ways of dealing with it was like putting it aside and not seeing it for as it was. But I think it's also because kids maybe can't process it in the same way, although they were impoverished and they were literally begging. Sounds horrible, but like you kind of see it more as like you want to help, but it can get really annoying. Like if you give you give someone money, which we always did, literally 20 would just like flock out and just to hang off you and stuff, and it was overwhelming, and you can either have a panic attack, which I used to do, not in those situations, but or you can try to just be like, get away, like as in the sense of like, look, we can't do much more, sorry, and move on kind of thing. As an adult, 100%. I remember going back when I was in before South Africa, I went to Borneo, and I remember waiting outside the shop, and our guide went into the shop, and outside the shop there was probably 6 people begging, maybe. And he went into the shop, he came out with like a sandwich with crisps, with a drink, and he was eating that all as he came out of the shop, and they were all begging him. One guy was following him, asking him for something, and at the time I was like, oh my god, like I just want to go in the shop and get something for them, like that's horrible. But then it brought me back to, that's very interesting that now as an adult I'm thinking I feel that guilt. Whereas as a child, I was able to sort of process that and put it to the side to try and deal with the situation. And you kind of have to anyway. There's not much, you can't help everybody. You want to do the best that you can. And I don't think it's like, you don't want to go through life just feeling guilty about everything that you do. I think it's healthy to understand what's going on, not ignore it. And if you're in a position at that moment in time to help them, and you want to, then do it. Why not?
There's been a really good couple of arguments come up on the podcast actually about the benefit of caring, unless you're going to do something, right? So I think as adults we're pretty good at that. Like we push things to the side if we can't see the problem, or we're not in the problem. We'd like to think it doesn't exist. You talk about that, about the Ukraine war now. It's like, well, it's not really happening because it's it's not right in front of me. But yeah, it's like, if we get in uproar about what's going on in Ukraine, it's like, well, unless we're prepared to do something, is it harmful to me, the individual that's going to sit there and care and wish things were different, but not be able to do anything?
Yeah.
Is there a part that you just need to get past that, live your own life enjoy it, get on with it. It might sound a bit cold and ruthless, but the outcome's the same.
Yeah.
For the people in Ukraine.
Yeah, I think so personally. I mean, like, you still are conscious of what's going on, and I wouldn't stand here and sort of, you know, like, I still have my own morals. Like, if someone was just mouthing off and was going crazy and saying like this is all a load of rubbish and the Ukrainians should just pack it in and be quiet and shut up or whatever, I'd definitely be like, well, look, let me listen, mate. That's not on. Like, you know, the situation is complex. You know, they've been invaded by an entire different country and stuff. Like, I wouldn't just be like, I'm not going to get involved. But that's just because of how I am, probably. Like, I'd rather say something than just be like, you know, just be a bystander and let something like that go. But at the same time, I'm not exactly going to get into a fight over it.
Sure. Yeah. No, I get that. It's interesting. Like, as a youngster who's lived in places like Russia, does a part of your heart stay there? You know, when we have obviously alliances and allegiances to certain countries, or you know, we might have travelled and it's our favourite place and we have an alignment to it, our heart is there. Do you have any of that with Russia, Pakistan, Oman, where you go, do you know what, I had a great time there, therefore, you know, I'll always look favourably on that country?
No. Like, so in the sense of, I'll put it in this way. Are you from the UK?
Yeah, I'm England.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
Commentary boy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, the UK to you is probably its home.
Yeah.
So if you go overseas and you travel and you have a trip and you come back, you get this like, home, I'm back kind of thing. I remembered the day that vanished for me, for Ireland, in particular.
Wow. Okay.
I was 13. I remember coming back and I was like, oh, fuck it. Like, I remember it was in the airport. There was an issue with like the flights or something. No one wanted to help. They were getting shitty at us. And I was like, whatever. You know, I was like, I'm over this. And for something in me just clicked. Or stopped, I don't know. And now I don't have that feeling anywhere. And so it sounds so lame, but I kind of think like, you know, I'm a person of the world in the sense that I can literally go and live anywhere and adapt and be fine. And I say that because when I was in South Africa, I was living in a rat-infested caravan that was disgusting, but I made it my own and ended up staying there for about 1.5 years and living in that caravan. Yeah. You know, proper gypsy.
Well, but that's what I mean about your upbringing shaping the outlook that you have on in life. I could only imagine that amount of travel in a youngster would expand your mind so that, like you say, you can make home anywhere.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think a lot of younger people and people in their middle life, they have probably not experienced a lot of travel. And I think the less you experience, probably the less likely you are to go and do it too. Like you say, this is home, and home is all I want, and anything outside of that, it's uncomfortable. Yeah. So I think to have that as a youngster sets a really good path in life to remain open. I mean, I love travel. I spent 6 weeks in Iceland and just seeing how things are different, the weather, the climate, the people, the buildings, the drinks, the food.
100%.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's great to see.
It is
an experience.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit frustrating sometimes because I'm like, I love it. I don't know why I don't do more of it. Yeah. So, but there's a few things like that in my life. But then so what was the gap between you at Oman and then your decision to go and study in Australia?
Well, yeah. So Oman was high school. Do you call that here? I don't know what you call it here. Yeah,
we know what you mean.
Okay. And going back to the previous question, I would say like Oman was one that I look back on fondly for sure. So like it was probably the most fun I had given the age bracket, the country that I was in. I mean, Oman is lovely. You know, it's slow paced in Dubai. So it's not as like cool and crazy, but almost in a way that's almost good in itself. But yeah, so from Oman, I mean, throughout my entire life, I've always been into wildlife, animals. National Geographic was my favorite show. You know, we always had dogs and stuff growing up. My mom's family owned a farm. So I absolutely love wildlife, you know, and in almost every respect. And so I always knew I was going to do something in that originally. And when I finished high school, and got decent grades, which was great,
Mm-hmm.
because I was never good at school. I had the opportunity then to sort of look at where I wanted to go, and luckily with the grades that I got, there was no restriction per se, and Australia was one that I was thinking of. One, my sister was out there, which was great already, so she was in university in Gold Coast, so just down south from where I ended up going to university, and the Griffith University where I went had they have a fantastic environmental department that was there when it started, and just decided it was there or Canada. I think those are the two locations I was looking at, and Australia just seemed better. They have all the environments essentially throughout the entire country, so it seemed like a good one, and it was good.
How do you make big decisions like that in your life? How do you process it when you're you're left with either I go here or I go there, or what do I do with my life? So at that age, I mean, what age did you decide you want to go to uni? 18, something like that?
I didn't decide. It was sort of expected.
Okay.
So it was not just by my parents, really. It was the Oman. So when you're living in these countries like Pakistan, Bahrain, Oman, the schools that you go to are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that the best school I ever went to was probably Karachi, the Karachi American School, or the International School Karachi, as it became to be known. And if you think about it, what teacher is going to go out there and teach if they don't love what they do?
Sure.
It's seriously I always struggled in school, so I I was dyslexic. I was slow or something, I don't know, but I always had difficulty. And the teachers there were fantastic, but there isn't a conversation. It's even amongst the students. It's not a conversation of Oman in particular. If you weren't doing well, that's when you were picked on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of backwards here. Here, if you're doing well, you're like, oh, you're such a nerd, whatever. But over there, it's the complete opposite. It was, if you're not doing well, you're sort of not physically or in a serious bad way, but you were mocked and you're kind of shunned, but not really. But everyone has the expectation that you're going to university. It's it's the next progression. It's what's expected overall. So I always kind of knew I was going to university, and it was more about what is it that I really want to do. Because I knew I didn't want to do a 9 to 5. I was like, just shoot me. I like being outside, love the environment, and luckily found a degree that I thoroughly enjoyed and knew I would enjoy it, to be fair, because I had that passion. It was a severe passion, still is, for wildlife, throughout my life. So it was relatively easy to know what I wanted to do, which was lucky.
Can we just hang around that point then of these these normalized expectations of of course you're going to do well, if you don't do well, peer pressure, we're going to make sure you do well. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting you say that we're a little bit the opposite, which we are in the Western world, right? It's I remember the clever kids always got bullied at school. It was it was cool to be the guy who was a bit rebellious. Cheers, by the way, and here's to your fantastic Pure Booch.
Thank you.
Do you do you think there's a good argument to say that we should be trying to change that narrative here? And if so, where would you even start with that healthy peer pressure to actually demand that we're a bit better as a country and a nation, and that people that live in it should have higher expectations of themselves and not lower? Because I love that potential kind of topic and debate. Normal, like health, for example. Yeah, it's quite normal to be overweight now. Yeah. Should we normalise that to be it's normal to be in good health? And if you're not, we're not going to be as generous with our aid and help because it's under our control. What do you think about that in the way that we live our lives?
About the health aspect?
Yeah, just in general of that narrative of say in Oman it was, of course you're going to do well, it's expected. Whereas here we're the opposite. So do you think there should be an argument that we should take a leaf out of their book and try and change our culture to expect higher of our individuals?
Well, it wasn't necessarily a cultural thing within the local community. It was very much a cultural thing within the expat community in the school.
The subculture of the school.
Yeah. And I think it's a good thing. I don't think it. Like I said, it wasn't so over here. I was bullied in Pakistan, but for different reasons. It was more race reasons, but like, but not for, and over here as well, it would be sort of either, it would be physical or mental, assault on people who were doing well or something. I don't think that's great, and like either side of things isn't good. If that makes sense. So even if you're doing bad and over there, and if it was severe, I would say no. But because it wasn't severe, it was more just sort of mocking, like a light mocking generally, of people who weren't doing well. I don't think it's a bad thing, because you're in a sort of a community that you strive to do better, because everyone around you is doing better. They want to do better. There's a sort of a group drive, which is motivating in itself, I would say. Sort of, everyone says that. Well, I'd imagine a lot of people who think about it, who are in certain environments, know that if you surround yourself with passionate people with drive, the energy, it gets transferred, and you want to do better, and you want to,
and vice versa, right?
Yeah, 100%, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's my business pretty much relies on healthy peer pressure. So we take a guy who's probably not that happy where he's at, we put him in a group of guys that are doing the right thing, working hard, trying hard. Yeah. And the hope is that that's infectious and it rubs off on him, and that becomes the new normal. Yeah. So I think it's all about shifting new normals. It's like, if you're new normal, especially in business, right? Yeah. Like, you have to, and the staff that you bring on board, it's what we call our values, I think, whoever you want that energy and that drive and that passion. Definitely. So we kind of know this works, but I don't know what we do as a country to encourage these high standards. I mean, this is a completely different topic and debate we're going off on. But it does seem quite normal now to underperform and to maybe put eyes on more external influences like government, politics, and so on, rather than the individual kind of like try and...
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I love South Africa, which is a weird thing to say, I suppose, but in the sense that there's a level of personal responsibility in South Africa. Like, there are laws, and the laws can be and should be a lot better. But at the same time, if you want to get on the back of a ute or of a truck and drive down the road, standing up on it, you can. Like, the chance of being pulled over are slim, and if something happens, that's your fault. You decided to stand on the back of the ute, and they crashed, and you died, or you got seriously injured. Whereas, there's a level of personal responsibility that I think is very important, that we need. Australia is the far other end of the spectrum. It's a nanny state in my mind. You can't, like, being an ecologist, you're out in the park, in the national parks, and all the time. Part of what I did was I worked on a koala research project for 3 years, and we were out tracking them all the time, going through everywhere. And there was someone in Australia went into the national park, and tripped over a roost that was on the path, and he sued, and he won. And so that's why now in Australia, when you go to a lot of these locations, they've got raised wooden paths, which, to be honest, is actually quite good to help protect like the environment and stuff anyway. But the fact that he won for tripping over a feckin' roost in a park, lift your leg, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous in my mind, and keep your eyes open, and if you trip, you didn't seriously injure yourself, like, for feck's sake. There's no need.
When I was young, Paddy, there used to be parks everywhere, climbing frames and stuff. You don't see many now, because apparently it's one of the easiest places to... Parents, they could you believe this? There used to be people that would survive by suing. So it would be like, you'd have someone sit there and literally wait for... Because, like, if you're a kid and you're on a climbing frame, chances are in a day, maybe someone's going to fall off and hurt themselves. Now you can sue for that, Exactly. So it's kind of like, it really limits life, but people are actually making a career out of suing, because it's quite easy to sue now. Yeah. You can always look at, that's someone's fault. This should have been done. That should have been done. Yeah. So it's interesting you say that one case can... Well, it's kind of like, we see this throughout kind of politics in the UK as well. One case can often change the whole direction of where a country goes. So if that person sues and wins, that means the next person that trips over can sue and win. Yeah. So that can trigger off a whole set of behaviours, can't 100%. It? So, so back to South Africa then. So, like, that just sounds like a dream. You were there for what, 3 to 5 years?
No. A year and a half.
A year and a half.
Yeah. Cool. So, no, Oman was 5 years. Pakistan was 5 years. Yeah. Yeah, but no, a year and a half in South Africa. So, it was amazing. I mean, I I finished. It was a very weird situation when I finished university, in Brisbane. I was working 3 jobs at the time. I believe I was a tutor or an assistant tutor, an eradication ecologist up in the Torres Strait Islands, and I was working on the koala project as well, which was awesome. But when I finished university, they all finished at the exact same time, which kind of was like, oh shit, what am I going to do now, basically?
Sure.
And funny enough, I was reading a book, and in the book it talked about Save the Elephants. It was which is an organization in throughout Africa, to be honest. And it was Save the Elephants Kenya. I contacted just out of curiosity to be like, look, I'm finished up as an ecologist. I'm looking for some work. Is there any possibility of connecting? Blah blah blah. And they put me in contact with Michelle, who was Save the Elephants South Africa, and then she put me in touch with Craig Spencer, who was ended up being my boss from Transfrontier Africa, and it took me 9 months to get there because I didn't have the money, so I had to work. I ended up working another few jobs, just saving for 9 months. I was able to get some sponsorship from the university to help as well, which was great. And he was willing to hold a position for me, which was fantastic. So I ended up going out there. I want to say it was like March. I think it was March 2013, probably something like that. And I mean, massive shock. I mean, like I said, so it was. There's Kruger National Park, if you know it. It's like a rectangle, sort of the size of, I think, Holland. And then Baluli was the area that I was in. So there's the main Kruger National Park, and then there's a bubble that comes off it on the western side of it. And that was developed in, I think it was the 70s. Basically, they were able to get all the farmers at the time to drop their fences and open it up to Kruger. So it sort of just expanded the range, essentially. And the environment was very different because it was relatively new. You had a lot more sort of like young bull elephants coming in, and so the dynamic was different than you see in Kruger. So it was a very interesting spot to work in. But so that was where I was located, and it was a fully open reserve as well. So it was, we would look after the western boundary fence on our side, and then it just was fully open all the way across into Kruger National Park, all the way to Mozambique, to the coast that way, basically, which was great. But when I arrived, like I said, it was a caravan that I was on. So we had the campsite, which was an open campsite. We had some huts that students and volunteers would be in at the time, and in the middle we had the kitchen, the campfire, and the rendezvous. And my caravan was just sort of off over, sort of by the car parky area, if you want to think of it like that, but sort of like just away from the rest of it, which actually ended up being bliss, in the end. But when I arrived, it was, inside was disgusting. It was the roof was just covered in grease because they didn't open the top when they were cooking in there. There was just filth everywhere. There was hay all over the place from the rats like dragging in hay to sort of like build nests from and stuff. There was literally rats running around the place. And I had just traveled from Brisbane, so I was awake for I don't know how long. It was like 30 hours or something crazy, and then I was awake for another like 6 or 8 hours, literally just cleaning the shit out of this camper van. And I was like, there was 2 hours in or 3 hours in, because I was so exhausted, I was just like, I stopped and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? I was like, can I do this? Like, this is fucking insane, and I was like, no, fucking just do it, and so I got the whole thing cleaned in that time. I remember my boss coming over, Craig, at the time, and was like, oh, like, really sorry, like, that it's in this situation, blah blah blah. He kind of felt really guilty then, because he saw like how intense I was going for cleaning it. But once I had it cleaned, it was amazing. Like, we had a little fridge in there that it was gas powered. It was away from everyone else, so it was kind of like it was my own personal space and stuff. So it was really good in the end.
What was a normal day like for you in Kruger National Park?
So we'd get up. We would get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock from memory. So the camp itself. So just I suppose to explain, it's situated on the Baluli Nature Reserve, and Baluli is broken into segments, and it's owned. The land is owned by individuals, and then there's the government, if you will, of the, like, they come together and govern together. And my boss was the warden of that section of the reserve. Now you would think that it was sort of like, you know, a pyramid shape, and he would be at the top and being able to sort of like sort of manage and control as necessary, but it was very much inverted. So he had, all intents and purposes, had no serious power, and, you know, they could do whatever they want almost. And so part of what they would do for funding as a whole would be trophy hunting. So they would bring in Americans and terrible people, some other people who just, you know, God, I met a few of them, and they're just a certain type of person. And they would hunt buffalo, some gazelles, you know, etc. And before Craig went, they were hunting elephants. I think at the time, I think there was 2 licenses that they would sell. But he stopped that, and what he was doing was using funds from the camp that he was running to subsidize that, so that wouldn't be happening, essentially, which was fantastic. So we'd get volunteers in, we'd get master's students, PhD students coming in. We'd be managing. My job was managing the projects that we had. So we had 4 long-term major projects, which was the elephant vegetation woody impact. Sorry, the elephant impact on woody vegetation on the reserve, predator-prey relations, the WWF Black Rhino Range Expansion Project, and invasive plant species project that would just be constant. And then we'd have the smaller projects that we'd do throughout the year, which would be, you know, just game counts and grass counts and all sorts of stuff for fire safety and et cetera, et cetera. So what we would do is, we'd get up. So my job was the coordinator. So I was in charge of coordinating everyone's day, what we were going to be doing, who was going to be going out into what projects at what time, etc., throughout the week or the month that they were there or with us. And we would, but because it was myself, what's his name? I've forgotten the other lad who was working with me. It'll come to me in a minute, but it was myself, one other guy, and Craig, and it was just 3 of us. And so we would still have to get up, cook the breakfast, get the coffee ready, make the lunches, etc. The guys would get up at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and we'd go out into the field from 8 o'clock, I think it was. It was because we were going out into the field in between when the lodges were going out on game drives, essentially. So that, because we'd be walking in there, no one wants to see people walking through the fields and stuff, like when they're trying to do a game drive. So we'd go out about 8 o'clock, 8:30, and we'd be out all day. So we would go out. We would find the elephants. We'd be monitoring them, taking data on what they were doing, their herd demographics, etc., etc. And we had a couple of research projects as well. So we did have a master's student who came in, PhD student who came in as well, who was taking over an old long-term project. So that massively helped her with that as well. So we set up her entire project, helped her with that. It was the impact of it was the impact of elephants on certain plant species throughout the reserve, and that, because one of the biggest gripes, I suppose, with the lodges was that in our area they were saying that the elephants were just destroying the woody vegetation, and it looks really bad. You know, we can't be having trees broken all the time because the people who are coming to visit, it doesn't look great. But what we were proving was that, one, it's not it doesn't have a significant impact on the whole vegetation as a whole, but that elephants are essentially farmers. They're needed. They open up spaces. They allow for other species to grow, etc. So they're vital for new areas like Baluli, essentially. And then we had the Black Rhino Range Expansion Project. So we'd go out and we'd track the rhinos, collect data, make sure that that had to be daily because of the potential for poaching, etc., and all that kind of jazz. So we were stringent on that, making sure that we could get eyes on them all the time, basically. And we were out there for lunch. We'd come back then in the evening. We'd finish up around 4:30, 5 o'clock. We'd sit in the lapper and we'd enter the data. We'd go through stuff. We'd show them, you know, statistical analysis if necessary at that time, and then they'd go and have a break. We'd get the fire going and dinner ready and whatever else. When I was doing it, it was very structured. Dinner was like relatively quick. It was 7:30, 8 o'clock, and we were eating at that time. And then if you wanted to stay up, you could, and I would be gone to bed. But if with Craig and with the other lad that I was working with, Stefan, that was his name, Stefan. Jeez, they were annoying. It was like he's one of these genius, insane people, Craig. You know, he just sleeps 3 or 4 hours a night. Kind of expects the same from you. You know, you're on call 24/7. He would almost drink a bottle of rum every night as well. He would challenge people so intensely. Like, you know, he would. At one stage, he was like, I only have a certain amount of time with some of these people. I need to break them down to build them back up. I was like, this isn't the fucking military. Do you know, because he was in the military for years and he had 3 PhDs or something crazy. And so he wasn't necessarily a people person. Like, he would prefer to police the reserve, which is what he wanted to do. And I was like, I would consider myself more of a people person, and I relatively enjoy that. Loved what I was doing, going out into the field every day, collecting data on everything. And I actually, before I left, I had a discussion with him saying, look, I was thinking about creating an environmental research company. If I set this up, would you be willing to work together? And we would take over the research side and you could focus on the policing side, because he liked immediate results, you know, even though he was a scientist as well. It was just what he preferred. So originally he said yes. And I spent 2 years with my partner, who I met actually over in South Africa, building this environmental research company. And it was massive. Like, it was really big. And it got to the point where we started doing a marketing tour in Australia. So hitting some universities, 2 of them which were interested, they wanted to get involved. And then we came over to Birmingham to do the same. But when we were here, I hadn't heard from him, and I was like, we need to get this sorted, you need to sign the contracts, you know, blah blah blah. And, you know, we ended up actually flying over, because we're using the last of the money that we had to fly over to be like, what the fuck are you doing? Are you interested in this or not? Like, this is too big to just be, you know, to not do anything. We need contracts signed. We need the legal side of things done. We're inviting people from all over the fucking world here, you know, to come to one of the most dangerous places in the world and, you know, run around for all intents and purposes. I was like, we need to get this like down pat. And he was like, yeah, look, we'll sort it out, no worries. So we went away, left him the contracts, didn't hear anything, and I was like, look, I'm stopping this. I was like, it was too big at the time. I think it would have been great, but I don't personally think I had the right experience at the time to be able to pull it off. So I was just like, no, we're just going to have to pack it in. Like, it's still there. Like, we could still start it. We'd have to start it in a different way, but yeah, it was too big at the time and a bit unreliable. So yeah, I had to just stop. And then that sort of like transitioned then over to PJ Kombucha, which was my business before Pure Booch, because I was kind of like, what the fuck am I going to do now?
Yeah, well, you're still young and you still got a lot of energy, so like I'm sure your options are still quite varied. Have you watched much of the latest Attenborough work, Planet, Frozen Planet?
I believe I did. I'm different now. It almost, I don't know, it almost makes me sad to watch it, because I'm like, I'm not working in that, and so I don't actually watch it as much as I want to.
Well, it was sad on multiple levels for me too. I mean, it was quite brutal, to be honest.
I think I watched a couple and I was like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, even the natural way things go is quite tough as a human to watch. Like, I remember watching the Eagle episode where they go down, they pick up these goats, and then they kind of fly them over these rock faces and they drop them to their death. Yeah. And then they go and get them. It's just absolutely brutal. And then you've got the damage that we're doing as well on top of that. And it just seemed like harshness after harshness after harshness. It was quite brutal. And like when I hear someone do the work you do, I can kind of see how important it is and probably how rewarding it is. I don't know if I'd be able to separate my emotional input from it.
It's tough. I mean, that's where a lot of my drive comes from. So within the natural world, okay, you know, I cannot, like, I get more angry when I see sort of like human animal injustice than anything else. You know, like if people kill each other, like, this sounds terrible, it's really bad and I hate that as well, but it's more like, for me, though they're too conscious, beings that have thoughts and are able to, like, you know, make decisions and stuff. Whereas when I see a human on animal conflict or something, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you know, because I get this sort of like protective sort of thing about me where, you know, for example, if you see like someone abusing a dog, I'm like, you know, that's just fucking horrible. Like, the dog can't really do much.
No, there's an innocence to animals and children. There's an innocence that it just makes it extremely difficult to watch. But even, like I say, even in the natural progression of, you know, prey and predator, it's still difficult to consume and watch.
It is. I've absolutely been able to kind of. It's tough to watch, but I know it's natural. Of course. You know, so I'm just kind of like, that's cool for that in that regards.
Yeah.
What I don't like is sort of, you know, crazy story, couple of stories, but like when I was in South Africa, one of the lodges would always bait leopards, which is that's not good. Like, they basically will kill a gazelle and they'll string it up and they'll, you know, they're enticing the leopard to come in and just for views essentially, so people can see it and whatever else. But you're disrupting the entire natural lifestyle of the leopard and stuff, and you're changing things, and you're making you know, relatively speaking, it's sort of more accustomed to people and you know, not having to do the work that it needs to do, all sorts of stuff. I mean, over time it can really disrupt everything, and that's just like a big no-no, and it's something that we always tried to push back there. Another one was, this was a big one, but we had a pride of lions on the reserve, and Baluli is one of the most densely populated parts of Kruger as a whole for lodges, you know, so it's difficult to manage because there was part of some of the research that we were doing was the impact of close encounters with game drives on the stress levels of elephants, and we'd basically collect the elephant dung and you can measure the cortisol levels, etc. Within certain interactions and stuff. You can measure it. All of this is measurable. And what we found was that, and other research was that the interaction with certain on highly densely populated areas of reserves with game drive vehicles was on par with an elephant being hunted or shot or something. I think it was. The cortisol levels were as high. So you can, and the area that we were in as well, you know, they were traveling through some areas that, you know, made them a bit more anxious than usual. But what was I saying? Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Oh yes, yeah. So sorry. So where I was going with that was, we had a pride of lions on our section of the reserve, and it was they're sort of, you know, it was actually amazing. You know, every 3 weeks there was 2 male lions, and where I was in my caravan, there was the dirt road was sort of just outside it. So I had a big sort of bay window in my caravan, and if I opened it, I could just look out and see everything. And every 3 weeks I would get woken up by the 2 male lions, like contact calling and walking along that thing. It was just fucking cool in the middle of the night. It was epic. Elephants and all sorts of stuff. It was mad. But anyway, the stress that the game drives were putting on the lions pushed them over into a different area, across the river and into a new area. It was still part of the reserve, but the main game drive areas, lodges, etc., they couldn't get over there.
Sure.
So I don't know what they said to not convince him, because he wasn't convinced. He was extremely angry about it all. But we ended up organizing the collection of this pride of lions, you know, with Craig and stuff, and it was horrible. Like, it was something that we just shouldn't have done. We know we didn't want to do it, but I can't remember. Like, remember how I said, like, the pyramid structure, like, he should have been at the top and being able to say, look, no, we're not doing that tough shit. But for whatever reason, it's all inverted, and they had full control. And I think they were going to say they were going to get someone else to do it or something anyway. So, you know, I think Craig wanted to make sure it was done right. Anyway, we ended up going over there with a whole bunch of people and baiting the pride with I think it was a dead wildebeest and dying sounds and stuff. And eventually they ended up coming in the middle of the night, and they ended up dorsing Doris all of the females first. The male, there was another male over there. The 2 males didn't go, obviously, because the pride left, not the males, if that makes sense. There was another male over there that ended up taking over the pride. And they Dorised the females. The male ran off up into the coppice, and the cubs stick around because the females are still there. So then you end up Dorising the cubs as well. But one of the younger females and a cub ran up into the coppice as well. And I remember just hearing like the male going absolutely apeshit. I was like, fuck, he's probably trying to kill the fucking cub, because that's generally what they do. And you could hear the young female, like fighting as well, and we're like, oh Jesus Christ, like, you know, like this is horrible. Anyway, they started loading the rest of the pride onto the back of the trucks and stuff. And I remember we had to get out and walk up the coppice, and the guys were able to dart the other 2 eventually. And I remember, I don't know why the fuck I was there, but I remember being in front of everyone with a stick, like that's going to do anything. And I could hear the male breathing, like I couldn't see him. He was behind all the bushes, but I could fucking hear him. And he was only like, 5 meters away. Like, I mean, it was so fucking close. Like, it was just chilling. Like, I was petrified, and the adrenaline was just fucking running through me, like. And eventually, luckily, nothing happened. They were all safe. We were safe. We were able to get out there. There's a couple of photos on my Instagram as well, because they put some of the females in the back of my truck, and we ended up going back and putting them onto a particular lodge's piece of land, and we put them there. We revived them. We made sure they were okay. They ran off, and we'd fecked off as well. And
what stopped them moving back then? Was there certain kind of barriers put up?
No. So to be honest, I can't remember what happened, but they would eventually just go back if they would. They would. Like, I mean, if the stressors were there again, like, they would just feck off. So there's nothing stopping them. Because we're not, like, you're not going to put up the fences. That's completely against everything. But yeah, it was just a crazy experience.
You're one of these guys who's got like kind of multiple lives. Like, you've had your interesting upbringing and travel, then obviously your time in Kruger, and then you moved to Birmingham. Yeah, and set up a kombucha company, which is fucking awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
We should give it a shout. Pure Booch, ginger and lime, my favourite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite just completely different to what we were discussing, right? How did that come about?
Yeah, so when I was in South Africa, when I decided to leave South Africa, I went back to Australia. So my immediate family were living in Perth at the time then. So my parents moved to Perth. My sister was in Perth. Sorry. My sister was in Perth, and I decided to move back. I met my partner, Joel, in South Africa, and eventually he followed me out there as well. He'll tell a different story, but he followed me out there. And we started working on the research project.
Yep.
But at the same time, I came back with a skin infection from South Africa, went to the doctors, they put me on antibiotics, it went away, it flared back up after a while, they put me on different antibiotics, it went away, flared back up, and this went on for 9 months. And I was, at the end of it, I was like, listen, like, I don't want to be constantly going on these fucking antibiotics, because it was like completely banjaxing my entire system. I started feeling horrible. So I ended up going to a dermatologist and I was like, listen, I just want to get this tested. Like, we to see what it actually is, so that we know what will actually kill it and get rid of it or manage it or whatever. And he said, look, let me put you on these antibiotics, right, first for 3 weeks, shower and surgical scrub 3 times a day for 3 weeks, and if it doesn't go away, then we'll do all that testing and stuff. And I was like, oh, fine, feck it. So went on this stuff. Yeah, Jesus, it was horrible. Like, I mean, these antibiotics were intense. I was, I could taste the surgical scrub in my mouth. It was horrible. And I remember being in that moment and being like, I need to just sort my entire system out. Like, my microbiome is completely shot to hell. I need to go on a journey to just sort it out. So I was looking for like soaps and all sorts of stuff from like Japan that were like, prebiotic, probiotic, anything that I could find externally as well. And when I finished the tablets, I went on the antibiotics. I started on the probiotic tablets. didn't feel any immediate effect. And after a while, I ended up just stopping because I was like, I don't really see the point now in taking them. Everything was still all over the place. I was still bloated all the time. I was irregular. I had developed issues with foods I never had before. And when I was out there, I saw a kombucha on the shelf in Australia. This is literally going back 9 years now. And saw kombucha. I was like, the live culture aspect, I was like, feck it, let's give it a try. And within 2 days, my bloating went away. Within a week, I think everything got back into working order. And within about a month or so, all of those issues with foods I had just started to disappear. And I was like, what the fuck is this? You know? And so my sort of background in research science sort of kicked in, and I did everything that people usually do. I looked at Wikipedia, YouTube, etc., like, you know, the top level stuff, and realized I could probably start making it myself. But I also looked in sort of to see if there was any peer-reviewed research science in kombucha or anything like that. There's not a lot. It's all experimental primarily. There's a lot more coming out now, which is quite exciting. And you can extrapolate from other research on teas and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I started tinkering with my own recipe in my mom's house, which she wasn't overly happy with because I had fucking scobies all over the place. She'd open a pantry and be like, what the hell? What is that? I sort of settled on my recipe, and I just started making it for myself while we were out in Australia. And then eventually, like, some family and friends were interested, and they were wanting it. So I was just making it, and people could have it if they want and stuff when I was out there. And I had no intention of doing anything because at the time we were working on the research company, and this was helping me, so I loved it. And when we ended up coming to Birmingham, because we were going to do the marketing tour here in Birmingham, and I decided to pack it all in because crazy boss. Really amazing guy, though. I just want to say that because he really is. He's a genuinely amazing person, but just difficult at the time for that type of business. But yeah, so came to Birmingham. At the time, I was like, I'm not going to brew kombucha here. This is crazy. You know, it's temperature dependent. This is the UK. You know, I was like, it's going to be so hard to make it. So I looked in the market at the time for other brands so I could just buy it in and drink it. And I think I tried like 4 brands, and I was like, what is this stuff? Like, it was just, the taste profile wasn't great. I didn't trust the way they did it because I can, like, there's certain brands that you put in front of me and I know what they've done just off the taste and smell alone, which is crazy. But yeah, so back then I was like, I don't like any of them personally. So I was like, I'm just going to have to fucking do it again myself. So we were staying at Joel's mom's place at the time because we weren't planning on staying there long term. So it took us a while to get out of there because I ended up starting a company. And but what I did was I took over her stairs, her cupboard under the stairs. So it was very Harry Potter style. Right. You know, I outfitted that. I like painted it with like antimicrobial paint and all sorts of stuff to make it nice and sterile. I had a max capacity of I think 100 liters in 4 2,500 a liter demijohns. And I just thought I was making it, and then, you know, I was in that moment where I was like, what am I going to do? Like, you know, we've decided to pack this in. We were working on this for 2 years. And I had a chat with Joel, and I was like, you know, what should I do, kind of thing. And people were interested in the kombucha here as well. So I was like, should I test and see, like, if people want it, you know? And so I decided, why not? You know, let's put some stuff together, see if it sells. And I chose London because it's, you know, more affluent, people with a bit more money to spend for all intents and purposes. So I used to go down to, I think it was Fulham, like farmers market every Sunday. So every weekend I'd go down, test it, and we were selling out almost every month. And it got to the point, I did this for about 9 or 10 months, and I was using it as market research. So I would tinker with my flavors. I would change things up. I would ask questions like, do you like to be able, literally down to this, do you want, is this helpful? Is that not helpful? Would you rather have a like a beer cap instead of a screw cap, you know, etc. Like really nitty gritty stuff if people were willing to talk to me. And through all of that, I kind of, you know, gathered all of this information. I really narrowed down on my flavors and flavor profile. And again, it got to the point where it was, you know, what am I going to do here? Like, we're still living at Jackie's house, like his mom's house. I don't have a decent income because I'm trying to get this off the ground. Like, what do we do here? And, you know, had another chat, and he was like, well, it's selling. so that's a positive. Like
Sure.
people are interested in it, they want it. You're selling out over almost every month. And throughout that period, I had family and friends interested, like overseas and stuff as well, and they were like, they were interested in wanting to help me out if I thought that it would be a good business or whatever. And so at that time, I ended up having a chat with a few of them and was like, I'm thinking about doing it on a larger scale. We need to get out of the house. We need to get some more capacity. We're going to have to find a unit. I was like, are you guys interested? And luckily they said yes. And I was very honest with them. I was like, if you give me any money, it's gone. Like, that's what I said. I was like, I was trying to protect myself at the same time. It doesn't fucking work. But I was just wanting to get them into that mindset of, if you give me anything, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
If you get it back, fantastic. But just that money's gone. Like, this is where we're at here.
Okay.
I was like, if you're still willing to do that, then great. It didn't help me. I mean, like, the pressure, like, of making sure this business didn't go under because people gave me their money. I was like, I was hoping it would help me, but it didn't. So I always had that pressure, I still do, over my head, of making sure that I can make this work and make sure that I don't waste people's money, that they've been nice enough to give me. But it was thanks to that support that we were able to get one of the units that we're still in today. We're in our 4th iteration of the layout of the butchery, as we like to call it. But yeah, we were able to get in there, scale up slowly, because you can't just go from 25 liters to 10,000 liters of kombucha. You need to sort of like incrementally increase the production. So we went from the 100 liters to 400 liters, 400 liters to 1,000 liters, 2,000 liters, I think. 2,000 liters to 4,000 liters. And I think that was where we ended at that time. So we were at, before the pandemic. And so before the pandemic, we were doing okay. We were at break even pretty much, which was great. I mean, it took years to get there, but sure. Because I started in 2016, I incorporated in 2017, and that's when we got the first unit. And it was just me, it's just me working on it, which I don't recommend. It's batshit crazy. Mm-hmm. I mean, the way I set up the business wasn't it wasn't it wasn't what I wanted originally. I was lucky enough to be part of the NatWest Business Accelerator program twice, which was great. So that they helped me a little bit with just being able to be in a room of 85 other entrepreneurs that were working on their other businesses, all the way from like another startup to people selling their business for 110 million plus whatever, getting $200 million pounds worth of investment and stuff, crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. But great to be in a room of other entrepreneurs and being able to just tap into their experiences and knowledge and stuff. I lost train of thought again. What was I saying? At the unit. What was I saying? Completely forgot.
No, well, you said you got to 4,000 liters, and I think you're about to say you outgrew that unit. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I was kind of going on. Oh yeah, sorry. I was going on how. Oh yeah, why we ended up going the route that I ended up going on. So when I was originally starting out, I knew that as a single person trying to run a business, that like there's so many different aspects of the business, and marketing, sales, finance, production, etc. And I was like, great if I can, like, it's not in my best interest to do all the production myself, because I know I'm going to have to, like, pretty much all of the capital I get is going to have to go into equipment and getting more stuff, and cost a fucking fortune. So originally I reached out to manufacturers, like drinks manufacturers, and I think I called, I don't know, 10 or something. And when I would describe the product, they literally were like, no way. They were like, it's volatile, like it's crazy. For them it was, we do soft drinks, we mix syrups together and we get it out the same day kind of thing. And I'm like, no, this takes 30 days to ferment, and they're like, and I was like, it's volatile because you have to make sure that everything is right so that it doesn't get alcoholic or whatever. And they were like, fuck no. Like, pretty much all of them were just like, there's no way. So I went down that route first to see if I could. That was an obvious no after a while. And then I went to breweries. So I went to other fermented businesses, and breweries were the next up to kind of either sort of see if they wanted to get involved, or this was way back, so this is 2017, like if they wanted to get involved, or if we would be able to sort of like piggyback off their equipment or their site or experience and expertise and whatever else. At the time, no one knew what kombucha was. You know, I mean, London was the best place, but it wasn't right for me, like going down to London and setting up business there. The cost would be extortionate, etc. So no one knew what it was. They weren't interested. So that ended up being a no as well. So we had to, it was the only route. I had to do it myself. I had to invest any money that I got into capital. I had to into equipment, etc. And I had to do all the production myself and everything else then as well, which is why I say it's batshit crazy. If you're going to try and start a business yourself, it's mad.
Most entrepreneurs are a little bit crazy though, aren't
true.
they? I mean,
100%.
what you've just mentioned there, you know, from sales to production to marketing, I think that's the hardest stage for a lot of entrepreneurs, where there's so much to do. And if you're starting on a £0 budget, it's like, oh my god, I've got to do all of all of these things. This is when we talk about mental health and such, there is almost a stretch point for an entrepreneur. They've kind of got to push right to their limits before they go totally insane, but you're kind of close to that level. Some people tip over the edge and do go insane. But how important was it to have people believe in you? Because it sounds like if you're saying, look, you know, if you give me cash, you might not see it again, and they're still giving you cash, it's a pretty clear indication that they believe in you. How important do you think that is in business and in life, really, just to have somebody to say, do you know what, you might have doubts, but I believe in you?
I think it can be extremely helpful, for sure. I mean, I don't know, I didn't really see it like that, interestingly, which is weird. I seem to be able to work well by myself, even though I don't want to.
Okay.
Which is interesting. That's interesting. It obviously helps, you know. I mean, if you have people who believe in you, but at the same time, it only goes so far for sometimes. Like, you know, like my partner, my parents, my friends, unless they were entrepreneurs, they didn't get it. You know, we have a different mindset. Like, it's a weird mentality that we have, like you said, we're mental or irrational. I don't know what it is, but like there's something that we just think different, and conversations can only go so far, which is why I said that it was great to be part of the NatWest program, because I could talk to another entrepreneur and I can actually, you know, express all my woes, and they're like, I get it, you know, and then they go on about their experiences, and then together we're able to kind of like, you know, pull each other up again and you know, share experiences and share knowledge and you know, give some advice and stuff. And with your partner or your family and friends, like, they have all the best intentions, 100%, you know, and you know, they're behind you, but at the same time, like, it only goes so far, like, for them and for you. So it's difficult. It's difficult. It was definitely a strain on my relationship, for sure. And because we two different people, you know, luckily family and like my family weren't here. My friends aren't here, like, they're overseas. So they didn't have that day-to-day, you know, it's hard. I mean, you end up, you have days where you're just like, oh, fuck's sake, and you're bitching and you're moaning and you're like, Jesus Christ, you know, you're not the eagle soaring above, you know, you're kind of that duck quacking in the corner like, oh, fuck this shit, what am I doing, you know? And, you know, at the time, my partner and his mom and stuff were that they would get that, and I would want to talk to them, and they would give advice and stuff, and it would help, but it would only go that far and stuff. But always knowing that they were supportive and they did believe in me, it 100% helps. Like, it definitely does.
What about the opposite? Do you find motivation in anyone that doubts you?
Yes, 100%.
More than the belief. Right, okay.
100%.
Well, this is interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like, for me, I don't know if it's because it's through my life, you know, it's been everything. It's almost better for me for someone to come up and be like, this is never going to work, you're useless. And I've consistently, that is a massive driver for me. That was something I had to get over, actually, when I went into this business and being an entrepreneur, because like, no one really cared about this business. Like, there wasn't anyone who really, like, because I was here in the UK, the only person I knew was my partner and his mom. I didn't know anyone else. Like, I have no friends or anything like that. So very isolated. So apart from them two, who did believe in me, and they were like, yeah, you know, go and do it. You can do it. whatever. There was no one who cared enough to be like, you're never gonna be able to do that. Like, what the fuck are you doing? So I never had that, and it was actually interesting for me to try and get over. That was my original drive for a lot of things, and to be able to still push through to continue going. Very difficult, but yeah, I mean, I had one of my professors in university turned around to me and said, "You're never going to get a job in South Africa." And I was like, "Well, fuck you," and I literally went, and this was when I first went to Borneo. So I did a research project in Borneo as part of the university, and that my motivation and drive for that was partly that. I was like, well, fuck that shit, I'm going to show you, and I ended up getting like sponsorship from a professor at the university to be able to go over and do that work. Pardon me, I had in high school, everyone said I was going to fail. Like, I honestly, like, we at the end, we did the International Baccalaureate, the IB program, which is, I could have skipped the first year of university. Like, it's quite an intense program. It's a great program, I think, but it's intense. And when you go through mock exams before your real ones, and it wasn't based on, no, sorry, we do go through mocks, but it's like the teachers give their expectation of what you're going to get as well, or something, and they all failed me. And I was like, what the Jesus? I was like, what? And so I literally spent 4 months prior to the exams, or 5 months prior to exams, myself, like literally studying everything, writing it down. I would spend 3 hours after school, after I did everything else that I needed to do, studying every day, and it was so regimented. And I ended up getting, I think that the highest you can get is 42. I got 32 out of 42, but 32 was my highest grade that I wanted to get, right? And 42 is like genius level. Like, honestly, the guys who got 42 or close to 42, they went to Harvard and all of the Ivy Leagues, like the crazy stuff. Knew I wouldn't get there, but I was like, this is my top mark. I ended up getting 32, and like, apparently, like, I didn't know this, but when I left, like, they were saying that I was the success story of my grade kind of thing, but that the driver was them saying I'm not going to be able to do it. It was the same the year, like, we did IGCSEs or similar here, but the international version. And I'm terrible at chemistry, and I had a Dutch teacher, and I went in, and you had to get signed off on whether you're going to do the core or the extended version or something. So the harder or not harder, I don't know, but the highest grade you can get in the core is a C or something, or a C+. And I went into it, and you have to get signed off, and I was saying, oh, I'm looking at doing the chemistry, blah blah blah, and she was like, I don't recommend that. And I was like, no, it's okay, I'm going to do the core. And she's like, yeah, I know. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, again, same thing. And I was like, I went back home, I asked my parents, can I get a tutor, like, for chemistry? I got a tutor in chemistry, and I don't know what it was, like, this guy was just able to talk to me. Like, it just worked. He was able to teach me in a way that it just made sense in my brain that she wasn't able to, and I got a C+.
So how does somebody get the best out of 35-year-old Paddy now?
Jesus, good question again. I don't know. I mean, that's still there. Like, that motivation is still there. Like, if someone comes at me and says there's no fucking way, because
Pure Booch could still, in theory, fail, right? Like, it's still got that pressure. There's still self-doubt. There's still doubt. Can I make it in this industry? It's a tough industry, right? So I guess you've still got that pressure that as an entrepreneur you'll always have, and that probably 100%. Is like your fuel, I would imagine. Yeah,
definitely. It's definitely there. I mean, the good thing now is, we're in a better position than I think I ever was. Luckily, because we're now part of the Purity Group. So we have the backing of Purity, which is like, a £12 million business. They've got massive reputation. They've been around since 2005. They're the perfect partner for us because they're all about quality. It's quality, it's sustainability, it's community. Like, those are the 3 pillars. We've added an additional pillar for Pure Booch, which is education, because we need that around our brand. But everything that they stand for was what I was standing for with my business, PJ Kombucha. They created a wetland system on their brewery, which is absolutely epic. They've created a whole ecosystem, but it processes the wastewater, and like, it goes back into the river system. Like, it's fresh, clean water by the time it goes through the full system, which is epic. Like, and no one else was doing that, and it's not greenwashing. They did it when they started, and it's great. When the owner of Purity, Paul Halsey, came and saw and met me at the butchery, I was talking for about 2.5 hours or so. But at the end of it, you know, he had already tried the kombucha, and he was like, "This is a quality like product." You know, he's like, "Don't change a thing," and that's exactly what I was looking for, because I had a couple of people get involved back in 2019. And very quickly I realized it just wasn't, they weren't right. You know, it was very much like, you know, it needs to be quicker, it needs to be faster, it needs to be cheaper. And I'm like, that's, if we try and do that, we have to manipulate the entire product. And I'm like, this is not why I started. You know, I felt the benefits because of drinking kombucha after I had that incident with my skin infection and stuff. And, you know, I've stuck to my guns, you know, since. I'm like, I'm not significantly manipulating this product.
I think it's really important as an individual to know what you stand for, and to always kind of remind yourself of that, especially when money's involved.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if someone says, look, this could be a multi-million-pound business if you can just go from 30-day production to 15.
Yeah.
Like, there's a part that you just might think.
Yeah. I mean, there was 2018 where I had a moment where I was like,
Right, okay.
I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, because I knew that I was watching the international players, and I knew that they were going to come into the UK. One of them being Remedy Kombucha, which is a Australian brand.
Okay.
You know, they're based out in Australia and they ship their stuff everywhere. But they couldn't get into the UK because they have a sweetener in their product, in their kombucha, called erythritol, and that was banned by the EU up until 2018.
Okay.
And in 2018, they lifted the ban, and I knew that they were going to come in. And within 2 months, Remedy was in the UK, and they were absolutely everywhere. And they have serious guerrilla marketing. Like they say, they go in and they say, take all of that off the shelf. We'll give you 6 months worth of free product and stuff. Luckily, I didn't get significantly impacted by it because I was in Birmingham for one, but I was spread out around the UK more. So I had a lot of independent businesses all over the place. Whereas there was a company at the time called Wild Fizz. Great company, great people, great product as well, very similar to mine. And I remember speaking to him, and he was like, we've lost like 50% of our revenue in the past like 3 months just because of Remedy, because they were doing this guerrilla marketing, and it massively impacted their business. And then the pandemic hit, and then that just wiped them out, unfortunately.
Wow.
So like there's, I you know, I'm constantly seeing businesses like kombucha and breweries and everyone like failing, like they're shutting doors, especially now and stuff. But luckily, like Purity's in a strong position. Pure Booch is growing. We're not growing as fast as I'd like us to grow, obviously, but we're getting there, which is good. And sorry, just going back, I just realized I went off course. But in 2018, I did have that moment where I was like, if I just banjacks this product, if I filter it and I just make it ambient, then it's going to be so much easier, because, you know, the UK doesn't have great chill logistics. You know, everything is mostly ambient. There's brands that have done this where they filter out everything, and then they'll add in a couple of probiotics, you know, Bacillus coagulans or lactobacillus species, and it's ambient, so it's easier to ship. It can sit on the shelf outside, etc. And I understand why they did that. You know, it makes sense from an economic point of view. But they still market it as an authentic, great kombucha that's fantastic for you, that still has everything. And I'm like, it doesn't. Like you've pasteurized it. Like that's going to massively impact, like, you know, the other secondary metabolites that are produced, like vitamins, organic acids, amino acids, digestive enzymes. You know, these things are going to be disrupted. And at the same time, like at the same time as you don't want to have a single bad bacteria dominating your gut microbiome, you also don't want one good bacteria dominating a microbiome. You want a diverse ecosystem in there. You know, I like to describe the gut microbiome, my analogy, given that I'm an ecologist, I say think of it as a river system. Yeah. In that river system, if you only had one species of fish in there and nothing else, it's barren. It's not very sustainable. Something big and bad can come along and wipe it out and take over and grow and destroy everything, basically. What you want is a thriving ecosystem. You want multiple plant species, multiple fish species, microinvertebrates. You want an Amazon rainforest in there. And gut health comes when you have a diverse ecosystem. It's very similar to you know, the external environment, and that's when you have that, the benefits of that, you know, go through every system in the body. So with ours, for example, we have over 108 different species of bacteria and yeast at different quantities and different levels, but we have that diversity, and that's very important. And there's species that aren't found anywhere else. There's specific species to kombucha that can be found in different other kombucha species products, but if they're authentic, but that's going to massively help. And so in 2018, I did have a moment where I was like, if I do this, I can just fucking get it out there and probably grow it a lot quicker. But I was like, that's not why I started this.
Sure.
It's not what I'm about. I personally think if you have a quality product that's genuine and honest, I think that has longevity. Personally, I think over time people will gravitate towards that, more so than a quick, cheap product that, where there's plenty now on the market, but people are already asking the questions, well, hang on, why is that one ambient but this one has to be in the fridge? Like, what's the difference and why is that? Which is great. The modern consumer wants to understand what's in the product. We have what I call or describe as a clean label. I can pronounce everything that's in this fucking thing, and I know what it is. It's real stuff. We use cold pressed ginger and lime juice, organic, in our ginger and lime. We don't use flavorings or artificial sweeteners or natural sweeteners or flavorings or anything like that. Everything is real. In the cranberry and grapefruit flavors that we use organic dried cranberry pieces and grapefruit pieces, and we infuse the flavor into the kombucha that way, instead of using artificial or natural sweeteners.
Have you got a strawberry one?
No, we don't have a strawberry one, actually. There's a few that I might start testing in the future, which is raspberry,
nice,
pineapple, cherry, I think was another one. I think so.
So good. What's your diet like to supplement your gut health? Are you a meat eater?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, meat eater. I'm not the best. I mean, as a entrepreneur, with massive stresses on the brain, I mean, I've always been into health and fitness, and I found, for whatever reason, I think it's business related, I have not been able to get into a good habit or a good routine with fitness. Like, my mom used to be a personal trainer, so I've always been into exercising, and I know the benefits. I know the mental and physical benefits of exercising consistently, other than health benefits, obviously. And I know that can help me through, but the inconsistency has just pissed me off. So it's in the past year I've just done nothing, because I'm like, I do not want to start again and then stop again. I'm like, if I do it, what I'm trying to get my brain around in between having some time working and stuff, is to try and get it into my head that this is not about getting abs or getting big arms or whatever. What I need is a mindset around a healthy habit. Like, I have a shower every morning. I brush my teeth every morning. I need to just exercise every morning. Like, that's just the way it needs to be. It just needs to be part of my program or my just daily habit. And I'm still processing that to be able to just do it. But then at the same time, I know that I've gotten comfortable, which is dangerous as hell. Like, it's not good to be comfortable in this way when it comes to being, it's so much easier for you to just be like, nah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are all in as well, kind of people, and sometimes they go all in on one thing, like a business. The good thing with entrepreneurs, though, when they do decide to go all in on fitness, they'll probably become obsessed with that too.
Do you know what? Like, now that you said it, 100%.
Yeah.
I described, like, Joel has described that I'm like a horse with blinders on the business. Like, when I get on the business, that's it. Like, this is my focus. Like, this has to work. For me, it's like, if there's a problem and I haven't found a solution, it doesn't mean that there isn't one. I just haven't found the right way around it yet, and I need to work harder or think different ways or get out and do things. And I think that for sure is what's impacted it, because previously at university, it's very structured. So when you're at university, you go to class, you have these times, it's done for you. So I was able to focus on exercise, and I was, again, like blinders on exercise, because I was like every single day, like it was such a massive habit, like I would do it all the time. Whereas now, yeah, definitely it's swapped. It's the focus is on the business. This needs to work. I need to get this going. I need to focus on this. And if I did get into a habit, whether it be 3, 4, 5 months, if something significant happened in the business, that gone. Like that exercise was gone, the health gone. It was back on the business, focus, get this right, sort it out, you know, fix the problem. And then it was like, oh fuck, you know, then it was like back, and then I had to try and get back into it.
In my experience, because I've been in the PT game for 17 years now, for busy men like you, probably getting up and working out first thing is the only way, because you're basically, a job of an entrepreneur is to put out fires, right, and deal with shit. It takes up all your day, all your mental capacity. So it's probably like, okay, if I'm going to work out, am I really going to do it at 8 p.m? No. I'm exhausted, I'm tired, there'll be something to do. So I have to front load it, and it usually has to be the way.
100%. I've always been a morning exerciser because of that reason. Like even before being an entrepreneur, it was like there was too much excuses in the afternoon to not do it.
Of course,
I'm tired, or I've eaten too much, or like, you know, some stupid shit. You know, whereas in the morning it's like, get up, do it, done, and then it's done for the day, and you feel great, and you feel like you've accomplished something straight off the bat, and it's fantastic.
Definitely, and it's definitely been a big contributor to my resilience. And as an entrepreneur, resilience is one thing you need in abundance. You need so much resilience, because you can get put back every day, man. Punched in the stomach every day. Things just don't go your way, or the market crashes, or lockdown comes along, whatever it is. It's just pretty brutal, especially in today's economic kind of situation. It's a tough time to be in business now.
100%. I mean, when I started this, like the graft, I think that's what you say here, like the work, I knew what was gonna what I need to do. The work was never the problem. What I ended up finding, it was the emotional roller coaster. Was just, what the hell? Like, because it absolutely is. Like, you're up and down, you have wins, you have losses, and it's daily. Like you said, it can be literally in the morning you get this fantastic call, and then in the afternoon some shit happens, and you're like, oh my god. And
you get an email or some shit.
100%. And you're literally like this all the time. And I was like, I remember a few years in, I was like, I just want to be this. I just want to just can I just just try and manage and just be like stationary or whatever it is, you know. And that's what got me, like, and that's the difficulty, is really managing those.
Sure. Do you know, I think it's interesting what we want and what we think we want. So I always think I want that smooth line that you've just said, and then when I get it, I'm like, I don't want this. It's too boring. Life's dull. I'm like, give me back that fucking roller coaster, you know.
It's so true. It's very true, because I'm kind of like at that point now as well, same, where I'm just like, I've found my point, and I've kind of been able to manage it. You know, I'm not getting these massive peaks and troughs, but at the same time, 100%, it's kind of boring. I mean, like we're having some great conversations with some really big potential customers, and it's exciting, but at the same time, you know, experience tells me, like, don't get too excited yet, because until that fucking check clears or we're on the shelf, like, then you can celebrate, you know, because at the last minute anything can happen, and it's happened before, you know.
Sure. I think that's the painful thing about hope, you know, and like I said, a big company comes along and shows an interest. And you get your expectations up, and then, like, but you sound experienced enough to kind of know. What do you think makes a good entrepreneur then?
I definitely think, like, when I was straight off the bat, I was thinking like ignorance, because like you almost think, like, for me, if I knew the sheer amount of like emotional trauma, blood, sweat, and literal tears that I got put into this business, I would, like, what rational person would want to go through that? You know, I mean, like, it's so difficult. Like I said, the emotional roller coaster, especially if as a single, like you know, not having a partner in the business and you're doing it yourself, it's like batshit crazy. You know, you have to manage it. You have no one to bounce things off, really. You know, Joel, my partner, has been a fantastic help throughout, you know, tasting stuff and just giving advice and being the outsider looking in, which was a massive help as well. But I do think that if I knew, it'd be crazy. But then at the same time, I would never change it.
Well, that's what I mean. Knowing what you know, going back, would you still set up Pure Booch?
Yeah, 100%. Because I now, like, the sheer, like, although it's not great, and it would have been fantastic to be able to, like, you know, not have to go through it all. I now know I've gone through all this experience. If I started another business, like, I'm going to leapfrog so quickly, because I'm like, I know this doesn't work, I know this works, I know, like, what I shouldn't waste time on initially. Like, there's so many mistakes that you make, you know, they at the time seem right, and when you look back, you're like, Jesus, that was obvious, like, what the hell was I doing? But sometimes you just need to go through that personally. You need to have personal experience. I mean, it's actually really funny. one of my business partners, who is still involved in the business now. He's more of a silent partner though, at the moment, but he's a friend from high school. His background is in like economics. He used to work for JP Morgan. Like that's his background. A great sort of balance, because complete opposite to me. I'm not a numbers person. I'm high risk. And when when he came over, when he became part of the business, he came over to sort of like to check it out and help as well, for a short period of time. And a headless chicken is what I describe him as at that time. He was stressed. He was like running around like, you know, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do this, we need to bring this in, we need to add this, we need to do this. And I was like, would you calm down? You know, I was like, you know, my level of risk, and that was when I first saw it, like, is so high, even like, but not stupidly. Like, it's not like a stupid risk, although you still have to have that level of crazy aspect, I suppose. But for him in the banking industry, he's no risk. So he was the other end of the spectrum altogether. And so because our revenue stream wasn't as good as we needed it to be, he was thinking, you know, bring in this, just bottle a soft drink for that person. You know, we had someone come in asking us to do that for them. He was like, you know, add flavors, do this, like do kefir, do that. And I was like, stop. I was like, we have 4 flavors. They work, they sell. We need to just focus on that. I was like, nothing else matters. I was like, because everything else is a distraction. I was like, these work. This is what we focus on. We're not doing anything else for anyone else. I humored him and I had meetings and stuff. And I was like, we're not doing this.
Well, it's interesting the amount of conversations I have with guys who want to start their own businesses. But when I ask them, like, do you need the certainty of the income to feed your family? Yeah. Do you need the certainty of time with your family? Yeah. And it's such a bad mix because there is no certainty when you set up your business. In fact, that's the thing. You've got to be okay with risk and gamble, and you've kind of got to look at worst case scenario and be able to handle it. But another thing I think, Paddy, as well, that's really difficult as an entrepreneur is to know when to quit. And I mean quit in a healthy way where, like, this just isn't working. It's driving me insane. It's making me feel like shit. It's not going to work. And I think one of the most difficult things is to know when to do that, because you always think you're like the next step away from things working out. You don't know. In theory, you might be a million or it might never. So I know this author, Kit Dewell, she's great. And we had this conversation. She's like, you hear about the success stories about people who just didn't give up and then they finally made it. But she said there's way more people out there that don't give up and never make it. And it's kind of a difficult place to be, isn't it, as an entrepreneur? Like, is this working? Have I got what it takes? Is it what I want? Am I cut out for this? All these questions. I'm sure you've been through them, right?
But the first time and only time really was COVID.
Okay, yeah.
That was
for sure.
That was the only so I mean, beforehand I would rant and bitch and stuff, but I didn't mean it. You know, I wasn't like, oh fuck this, I'm gonna stop. But like during COVID, that was the first time when I was like, I had to sit down and I was like, can I do this? Really? Like, can I get through this? If I do get through this, like, I mean, I'd be like, because at that time I'd like 2016, was it 5 years, 6 years that I was doing it myself, and you know, I mean, with COVID, overnight we lost 90% of our business. Wow. And it absolutely shattered me, because I was like, we had just started breaking even. We just started to do really well. And it was, I mean, obviously everyone got annihilated. So this isn't a unique experience, but obviously in that moment you're like, oh, my life. And it was the first time I had to kind of really sit down and think, to really think that question, like, do I stop? Do I pack this in? You know, and I had to sit down with Joel. I think we had 3 conversations at separate times, and really had to think about it. And then I was, again, like, I suppose that ignorance, I don't know what it was, that craziness sort of kicked in, and I was like, I have a model. So while I was doing PJ Kombucha, I knew that there was going to be huge companies coming in that are massive compared to me, and they were going to enter the UK, and that I was going to lose market share. Not that I had a lot, but you know, competition was going to get rife. Sure. And in 2018, I started testing a private label model to see if it would work. And luckily I was able to get involved with one of my distributors. And so they were selling my product, but I was also producing their own label kombucha for them at the same time. And they were selling both. And it was doing well. And it helped help revenue. And so when COVID hit and I had the conversation, I had the thought, I was like, do you know what? Feck it. Let's just turn on the private label model and see if this does anything. And if not, then look, let's pack it in. So I turned on the private label model. Within 4 months, we had 4 new accounts, which massively helped. It brought a lot of revenue in immediately. And because of how I set it up, they had to pay in advance. They had minimum order quantities, but they had to pay. They had to prepay for 3 pallets, etc. And all of this was a massive increase in revenue immediately that helped us through that massive period of when we lost everything, all of our revenue pretty much, apart from a few. And so it worked, and it was working. And so I was like, okay. And then that's what led me into reaching out to more customers, to more companies, to see if they'd be interested in working with us on a private label kombucha. And that's what got me the conversation with Purity. And it happened so quick. I contacted them. I said, same thing. Look, I'm just interested to see if you want to work with us in some capacity. We do private label kombucha. Do you think that'd be of interest to you? The guy who I was speaking to was like, well, actually, I'm going into a meeting with the owner this afternoon, and I'll bring it up with him and see if there's anything. That afternoon, I got an email from them saying, can you have a Teams meeting in 2 days with Paul? And I was like, yeah, So I had a 2.5 hour Teams meeting with Paul. At the end of it, he was like, we might want to do something a bit more with you, but let me come and see the place. Let's meet in person. The next week I met Paul, and I was there for 3 hours with him, and he loved the product. And at the end of that meeting, he said, don't change a thing. And he was like, we'd be interested in actually getting involved. Would that be of interest to you? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because I didn't know of them beforehand, weirdly enough. I didn't actually, because I was so kombucha focused, I didn't have a life outside of it. But when I afterwards, when I researched them, I was like, look, this is fantastic. They've got a massive history. They've been around since 2005. They have a fantastic reputation in quality of products, sustainability, etc. And so after my due diligence, we got into it really quick. The legal side of things took a lot longer than anticipated. Originally, they thought it would just be like 3 months, and it was my fault because this is my baby. And I was like, I'm giving up a lot of control here. I was like, I want to make sure I'm safe. I want to make sure the business is safe, etc., etc. So a lot of the delays were on my side. And luckily, I had Duco, my friend, involved because he had been privy to a lot of contract-based stuff within his job at JP Morgan as well. And his friends had gone through some acquisitions, so he had some understanding of it all. So without him, I wouldn't have got as good of a contract as I have, which is great. But yeah, so it's kind of like if you talk to my mom, like, who's all fucking, the universe and stuff. I mean, serendipitous in the sense of right place, right time, those moments, those decisions that I made, it just seemed to work out in my favor, and it was lucky. I put it down to, preparation meeting luck, at this, what I mean? So like, for example, when I got the private label accounts, I needed to upscale. I needed to bring in new tanks. My friend was involved. He injected some more capital into the business, which allowed us to increase our capacity. So it meant that we would be able to be profitable at that time. So we were able to rearrange the units. I got a grant from the government, which paid for that. And we were able to outfit the unit so that we went from 4,000 litre capacity to 8,000 litre capacity. And then luckily when Purity came on, they invested money, but we've increased now to 16,000 litre capacity at the unit every month, which is great. But I think if Paul had come to the unit before I was able to rearrange and upscale, he might not have seen the possibility within the business. So it was weird. It was kind of like when I look back and think about things, it all sort of fit in at the right time. Like Paul loved kombucha. Like kombucha had helped him, so he was wanting to do something with kombucha anyway. He was stepping back from Purity in the sense of running it as CEO, so he's got a bit more time, to sort of help out with Pure Booch and stuff now and things. So everything just weirdly kind of helped, and so that's why I'm still here.
Yeah, it's very humble of you to mention the word luck. I think luck plays an important role for all of us. I know there's so much hard work goes into it, so not a lot of entrepreneurs want to think about luck, but you can call it destiny or luck. But I think it plays an important part.
Yeah, I think it's both. Like, I think it's that's why, like, it's kind of like, I don't know, I think I want to say it was Oprah, someone who said this, but it's like preparation plus luck equals success. And it's like, I do think luck plays a massive part. But preparation is so necessary. If I wasn't prepared for that situation, or if I didn't upscale at that time, or if I didn't have the capacity, or you know, I don't think these things would have fitted in so nicely in together at that time.
Sure.
So I think it's kind of like the hard work that you put into it, being prepared for certain situations that luckily come your way in those moments, and being able to actually, you know, pursue them. Yeah, because you're prepared. You know?
Well, you've definitely got the attitude of an entrepreneur. You can tell the energy, the determination. I think it's pretty admirable. Yeah. Last couple of questions, if I can. Yeah. We've been chatting for an hour and 40. Believe it or not. God. Who should drink Pure Booch?
Good question. I mean, anyone and everyone can. Obviously, they're not going to. But
it's beautiful, by the way.
No, thank you.
It's my favorite. In fact, you saw this. This was great from you. I did a podcast. Didn't know who you were. Obviously, I was drinking Pure Booch, and you messaged me. Said, great to see Pure. I mean, that's brilliant. Like, talk about hard work. You're seeing it. You messaged me. I'm like, oh, all right, cool. Yeah. So that's how we kind of got connected.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw it on the table, and I was like, holy shit, look at that. And then I looked through some of your videos, and you'd actually called us out, and I was like, oh my god, it's amazing. Yeah, you know,
it's very rare that I do that, like shout out something, but I generally was like, this is good for you, and it's fucking really tasty. So I was like, I got to shout it out. Yeah, so
massive appreciation.
No, it's a pleasure. Like I say, if I think something's really good and I believe in it, I'll shout it from the rooftops.
No, thank you.
Yeah, so who should drink it?
Yeah, I think anyone who's sort of like health focused, or just wants to have a more healthy option. You know, I mean, nowadays the standard soft drink section is Coke, Sprite, you know, boring stuff that none of it's good for you. You know, Pure Booch, Kombucha in particular, it's a functional, healthy soft drink is how I like to describe it. Like I said, we don't do anything significant to it. The way that we produce our kombucha is essentially like you do it on your countertop, just on a larger scale, and with better equipment that allows us to get the quality at a certain level that can allow us to have the shelf life that we need. A lot of that is down to like oxygen concentrations and stuff like this that can massively help. But yeah, so with our kombucha, you're getting the live cultures, you're getting the vitamins, organic acids, amino acids, digestive enzymes, etc., etc., etc. Everything that you associate with kombucha, you're getting with our kombucha. That's just genuine, honestly. Like, it's not bullshit. I'm not trying to, you know, sell anyone on anything else, you know. And for me, I drink this product. Like, I made this drink for me. Like, this is why I'm so determined not to change it, because I don't drink any other brand, because I don't really trust any others, or there is one out there that's very similar to ours, but it has much higher sugar concentration, which I don't like. So we actually have the lowest sugar content for an authentic kombucha naturally in the UK, which is great. So, you know, the sugar levels are low. That's thanks to our slow brew kombucha process, you know. So the way that we brew it is we put it on and we just let it do its thing. So really calmly, slowly, gently, you know, we stir it, we add some oxygen to it just to keep the bacteria happy. But that's why it goes through a sort of 25 to 30 day ferment. If we tried to push the ferment through, it could come out really acidic. It might not go through properly. It could be really sugary as well. So you're not getting the real, so you can get either end of the spectrum. So it can be like vinegar, or it can be just like the sugary drink. Whereas ours, I like to think of it as a nice middle ground. It's sort of a clean, crisp flavor profile. So it's not too sugary, not too vinegary, or tart, as we like to say. And has all of those natural benefits to it.
And something that I keep reading about is like Monster and Coke is really bad for your gut health, and our gut health is imperative to our overall health. And what I understand about kombucha, which is not a lot, is it's actually good for our gut health, and therefore to drink it is good for our overall health. Absolutely,
like authentic kombucha particularly. So it comes down to what I was talking about before. You know, there is a lot of kombucha on the market where they're either pasteurized, so they have no live cultures in there, and they're not telling people this unless they're really being challenged. You know, I won't say it now, but there's brands out there that are doing that. There's brands that filter as well, so they'll go down to absolute filtration, which strips out all of the benefits as well. And what some of them will do will then add in those probiotics just so that they can say it's a live cultured product.
Got it.
And then there's others, a lot now are using a kombucha concentrate, which is from a private company that at the time that I remember looking into them had no third party testing on the product. You know, it sits in a warehouse for 4 years, I think, you know, and just becomes extremely acidic. And although like their biggest thing is that there's no alcohol in it at the time, etc., but you know, if the environment, it can't be hospitable for everything. So there might be some bacteria in there, but is all of those other secondary metabolites in there? Like, can it support a full batch? Most people, from my understanding, most brands don't put it through a ferment. They just mix it with sugary tea solution and bottle it directly. So again, if it's sitting there, it's not hospitable. You're not getting all the benefits. There's no third party testing. So it's just to be very mindful. Like, this is why with ours, it's honestly, like, for myself, you know, I want it as natural as possible. This is why we don't use sweeteners or natural or artificial flavorings. You know, like I said, everything, it's a clean label. I think the largest ingredient list is 7, I think, and it's the ginger and lime one from what I remember. So, but like I said, ginger, lime, sugar, tea, kombucha, like, you know, that's it. That's what's in there. Water, you know, everything is in it. And you have other kombuchas that will have an ingredient list of 50 and I can't pronounce half of it. You know, it's like, what the hell is this stuff? Like, I mean, it's completely unnecessary. You don't need that in an authentic kombucha. But yeah, so for all of those benefits, it's just being mindful about what kombucha you're getting, and you can feel those benefits with an authentic kombucha. And I always say to people, like, if you just reach out to the brand, challenge the brand, you know, see if you trust them. You know, it's why we have an open door policy as well at the butchery. Like, anyone can come along if they want to. They can see how we do it. That's we don't hide anything. There's no closed doors. You know, we explain the whole process.
Amazing.
Which yeah, and so yeah.
Cool. Well done. I think, like I said, I think it's great, and I love your values behind it. I think this is what the Better Man is all about. It's understanding yourself and kind of living your life true to what you stand for, and you can do that through products and such. Yeah. So, traditional Better Man question to finish. Yep. I ask everyone this. It's quite a thought-provoking question. Yeah. What would you say you need to do now in your own kind of personal life, and maybe this is into relationships too, or even into business, to become what you would deem a better man?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think kind of like sort myself out. So sort of like, you know, it's a multitude of things, I suppose. Like, you know, I'm better when I exercise. I know that, like, physically, mentally, you know, overall health. You know, get back into exercising, create better habits around the business, around my personal life as well, which I'm trying to do. You know, I have, you know, it's honestly like small things. Like, I'm a big coffee drinker as well. I used to be, I mean, that's what I used to survive off. And I had to stop. I was getting heart palpitations. And what I would do is go from coffee to green tea, like full caffeinated green tea, which didn't help. So now I stop at 3:00 with the coffee. I will not have a coffee past 3, and I go on to decaf green tea if I have anything, or kombucha. You know, small things like that can help. Like, you know, I've got an Oura ring now, so like to look after my health as well. So my sleep in particular, I'm not a good sleeper because as an entrepreneur, you have everything going on in your fucking head. So it used to take me ages to get to sleep. I'm better now. Now that I'm part of the Purity group, I'm less stressed in different ways, so I can sleep slightly better. But yeah, creating those healthy habits, you know, on a daily basis, I think is very important. And by, you know, it's an old adage, but like, you know, if you look after yourself, you love yourself, then, you know, you give out good energy, and you can support other people around you as well, you know, and I think it's very important, to be honest.
Good answer.
To do that.
Listen, man, thank you. You're one of the most interesting people I've met.
Oh, wow.
I love it. I love your story. I love what you stand for, and your drive and your determination. And I wish you all the best with it. I think it's a great product, and if I can help in any way, I'll keep drinking it on here and shouting out about it. Because like I say, it's got someone who's suffered gut health problems my entire life. This has been quite useful, quite helpful. So thanks for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no, thank you. Cool. Thanks for having me.